So we thought that what we would talk about today, because this is the first time that Lily and I have been able to talk for several weeks. And of course, summer is coming to a close. So we thought we'd talk about what we've done over the summer, what has been good for us, and what has been lousy and has not come up to our expectations. And particularly because of the webinar that we did at the beginning of summer, talking about a sacred summer and what has been sacred and what has not been at all sacred for us, we thought would be a good way to talk about here. So Lily, why don't you get us going about your summer?
Okay, will do. I had taken the summer off, a lot of it post our sacred summer retreat, and was the goal was to rest. Because I've been on Zoom doing house church stuff on Zoom. We've been writing a lot of new stuff, but I was pretty exhausted from just all the emotional stuff of this past 18 months. But I realized probably early July that just because you say you're going to rest doesn't mean you rest. And I've been in my house for 18 months, pretty much shut down due to COVID. So, as an extroverted 7 on the Enneagram, I was like, I need to do something different to fill my cup. And I talked about this on Free Range Friday, that things that fill my cup are not just about, being still, even though I totally value that. But so I was like, what feeds my soul? And I was a camp counselor for a long time in high school and college. And I was like, maybe I should be a camp counselor, because I had friends who wanted to be, who were needing help. And I thought, well, what could be camp? So I kind of created a week of mom camp out in Colorado, because my son lives out there, Hudson. And our friend Kathy Escobar was getting ready to do a cool forest church at her Beauty Heals cabin, and I was like, oh, that's kind of stuff what I need. Because usually what I do in past life, pre-COVID land, I would go to the Greenbelt Arts Festival every couple of years in England to really, kind of be around people who are doing creative worship and things to learn more. And, haven't been able to do that for several years, sadly, even before COVID hit. And then with COVID, that wasn't going to happen. So it was fun to watch other people do some creativity and get to participate by, doing a little bit, but not having to create the whole thing. So that really, and do art. They have great art museums in Denver. So I got to go to an art museum and hang out with some friends I hadn't seen in a while, plus see my son that I hadn't seen in forever. So those were good things that fed my soul. But then you come back to reality. I was really excited, and you had a trip like that too, where it really fed your soul, but then you came back and was like,
yes. Yeah, I went down to Texas, had a wonderful week because my best friend son's wife, I should say, was expecting their second child, and it had been due the week before I went down, but actually arrived the day after I did. And so we had this wonderful week, 3 good friends that were together, plus this family that has kind of embraced us as, not just as aunts, but as like when this son was married, they actually walked the 3 of us down the aisle as the 3 mothers. So really close kind of a relationship, beautiful relationship. And so I had a wonderful week in Texas, just renewing my soul in so many different ways. Came back, and on the way back I knew I was having trouble with my sinuses. Well, I came back, I had the worst canker sore I have ever had in my life, actually ended up at urgent care because it was so bad. And then just as that started to settle, the sinus infection really kicked into gear, and I've never had such pain with a sinus infection, and I've had sinus infections all my life. So I had a couple of really lousy weeks. And then I don't know what, but something has been literally eating all of our tomatoes. We have trouble with critters getting some of our tomatoes, but I had one bush that, because some of the other bushes had been getting a lot of their tomatoes taken, the small ones in particular that I love to dry, I literally totally covered this tomato bush, stapled it down so that, I thought none of the critters are going to get into this. Well, one morning I came out, everything, the cover was still perfectly in place, and every single tomato on that bush was gone. Every single tomato, and there'd been a lot of them. And to be honest, we're wondering whether there are two-legged critters, because I cannot imagine a four-legged critter that would have been so meticulous in kind of getting in there without there being any evidence of it having gotten in there, and taking every single tomato, because they usually just take a bite out of this one and a bite out of that one and a bite out of the next one. So I don't know, but it has just been driving me crazy because of this. And you know, I said to at our community meal on Monday night, I said, I have never wanted to give up vegetable gardening, but this has made me. And fortunately, everybody said, no way. I needed that support to keep me going in terms of how I was feeling at that point in time. So
that's not funny, but funny, not funny.
Yes.
Well, because it's been a crappy year. You guys have had no rain. We've had an abundance of rain, and
not a drop.
It's not a good year. When we get too much rain, it's not, and too hot, not a good tomato year. So it hasn't been a great. I have a one tomato plant on my porch that was the hundreds, the little cherry tomatoes that are so good. Had a great plant, but you know, when I got home to yesterday, I have two little tomato, like 3 or 4. I might get a dozen out of that one plant this year for one salad.
Well, and of course, because it's been so hot here, you know, the tomatoes don't set fruit when it gets too hot.
We need to change
you know, the varieties we have. So yeah, so it's been challenging, but you know, so the question is, what has been good for you over the summer?
What has been good is connecting with people in real time, in real life versus just virtual life, although I appreciate virtual a lot. Got to see our boys. We hadn't seen both boys in the same place at the same time. I hadn't seen one son since January of 2020. So we got to see them in the last couple of weeks. And that was really fun to connect with them in real time. But that was good. I think taking time to just be aware of how tired and exhausted I really was, and kind of still am, because I have anxiety, and all the COVID stuff last year really shut me down for a couple of months, and it got me to reconnect in therapy, which was good. It got me to reconnect with Jesus in a good way too. But the part that's been hard is I was just kind of starting, after we got vaccinated and all that, started to relax again and be, you know, more peaceful. And
I
then
think we all did. Yeah.
And then, you know, I live in the South, so it is just a crazy land about how much people are fighting over wearing masks or getting vaccinated. And that just sent my anxiety in the last 2 weeks back to craziness, even when I was trying to be on holiday and rest. And that I realized that you have to learn how to be present. And what are the practices? I was thinking about practices, because that was part of our sacred summer, was what are the practices that keep us grounded, even in the middle of crazy. And so getting out in nature, that's what I have been doing the last couple of weeks, is getting outside and just, you know, stopping for today. And what is today, you know, what is today? And I can't control all the crazy things. That's what I did last week. I did the hand prayer practice because there were too many crazy things that I couldn't control. And it was just, there's so many things. And because we have this kind of media and we have our phones, we can hear about it all day long if we choose to. Yeah. So I took all my news apps, put them away, all the things. I didn't have a lot of things that popped up, but I had just enough things that popped up on my screen that would take me down rabbit trails I didn't need to go. So I've just closed all those down. And I was using, because I have trouble sleeping, I was using my phone as kind of, I was listening to like Downton Abbey at night, and I would go to sleep. So now I'm training myself to put that somewhere totally different, so I don't even ever see the phone anymore. But that's my new practice, is putting the phone. I know some people already do that, and thank you for doing that, because you're smarter than I am. But I just decided I can't do I can't deal with pop-up news, even though the phone was off. But if I looked at it, I would see it, and my brain turns on when I see things. I don't. Rob can go. Rob has the gift of sleep. He can just go back to sleep instantly. Doesn't phase him. And I'm like, oh, what are we going to do about that? Or what does that do? So rest is holy. That's my hashtag, and that's truly what we've got to keep practicing in the middle of the crazy land we live in right now.
Oh, yeah. And I find, one of the things I find is that interestingly, I find that if I stick to my morning routines of getting up in the morning, saying kind of a centering prayer, having a little bit of time, contemplative kind of prayer practice, then I do a bit of reading usually and read a scripture. And if I start the day with that, I sleep better at night. It sounds strange, but definitely I do. And what I haven't got down well is a similar practice that I do at night, because I really do need one where I'm letting go of the day and all the things that have, kind of upset me or whatever. Because, yes, as you say, the news, and I think all of us let down our guard. And I think this kind of resurgence of COVID is harder because of the fact that we'd let down our guards, so we've got to, it's kind of like Nehemiah rebuilding the walls. We've got to rebuild the walls, and which walls do we want to rebuild, and how do we do it? And who do we enlist to help us rebuild the walls as well?
That's really good. That's a great segue to your book you were talking about. First. Go first. But I like that concept of we have to protect ourselves, and we have to protect one another. And if that's the loving our neighbor is going to look, different for everybody, but loving our neighbor, all the practices that we did during COVID of social distancing and masks, and especially now, I've got friends who can't get vaccinated because of cancer, and can't get vaccinated because, they're 12 or under 12. And so,
it's terrible. I think it is much more stressful. But what has really helped me, I have been reading Howard Thurman's autobiography. Now as an Australian, I had never even heard of Howard Thurman. And then somebody had given me a book a few years ago, of his poetry and things like that I loved, but I still really knew nothing about him. And this book has just been, you'd say, I've been reading it like a devotional, just a few pages every morning, because, he was a lot of it in the 30s and the 40s. He was revolutionary. And, obviously he went through some huge things because he was Black, and he talks about those. And, a couple of weeks ago in my meditation Monday, I did a quote of what he said to his daughters when they weren't able to, where they were visiting his mother down in Florida and they weren't able to use the swings. And he told them, basically, he went through all the people who would have had to give, kind of the mandate that Black people weren't going to be able to swing in this park, use the swings. And he said, see how powerful you are, that all of these people had to come together in order to say you can't use those swings. And I thought, wow, what an incredible ability to kind of not only give those girls a sense of their worth, but also to reframe something so that it's not in a negative way. And I think, okay, I'm at a point where I need to reframe some things so that I don't look at them negatively. And I need to take advice from somebody who's suffered much more.
Yeah,
and that's also, the other thing, his creativity in worship was amazing. And I just wanted to read out a paragraph here, because one of the things he did was something that he called twilight hours, that he did in association with the Vespers. But he said one of the most dramatic expressions of twilight hours was one that in time became a chapel tradition at Christmas. This was the staged presentation of living Madonnas, posed to replicate great paintings. I selected 6 European masterpieces that seemed appropriate for this presentation, sent for reproductions, and then basically they staged it. They got people to do the different things, and then to do, they had women, obviously, to be the Madonnas, and then to enhance the visual experience, it occurred to me that an Ave Maria by one of the great composers could be played or sung. And so because this was at a university, they used the Department of Drama and Economics at the College of Liberal Arts, and the music department as well, to put this all together. Just a beautiful and amazing kind of presentation that, again, really, so he chose people from different cultures and ethnic backgrounds and all kinds of things. I just thought, wow, so profound. So this has been the highlight, this and something else that's been totally different. Another book called The Lost Words. And again, some of you have seen me talk about Robert Macfarlane's book, Landmarks. And the vocabulary of lost words was a novel that I read that kind of had the same kind of theme. And this is, it's kind of a children's book, though. It's just absolutely beautiful, where he takes some of the words that were lost from the Oxford Children's Dictionary and, uses them, and absolutely amazing art. And then, I don't know whether he wrote the poetry or somebody else wrote the poetry, and I was looking just for the one here that I particularly love, that in a way you cannot imagine, that was where is it? Oh, here it is. This is the dandelion one.
I love the art. The art is just amazing.
Imagine dandelion not being in a dictionary because it was, it's no longer being used enough. It's like, wow. So those two are the things that have really helped me. So
that's cool. Well, the two things that kind of are helping me reframe, we were talking about reframing. This book probably is changing the total way I'm looking at life right now. Love is the Way. And if you saw The Mandalorian on Disney Channel, he always says, "This is the way." So we've been going around "Love is the Way" in honor of this is Bishop Michael Curry, who is the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church here in America, and he tells great stories about how he got to be the bishop, and it's all about love. He really is the real deal. I've gotten to hear him speak a couple times and be near him in the same room. I haven't really introduced myself, but he loves Jesus and he loves the church and he loves helping people go. It's not about being in the building. It's about how we live our life in love outside the building. So, and that's not a very, you're Anglican as well. And that's not always the Anglican way we tend to stay up here. We're not about living it out. We come to the building, and so it's so refreshing to hear his vision for living as the people of God in the world. And especially now, he goes, especially now, we can't live in hate. It's kind of John Lewis-esque. We've got to live in love. And so this book, I'm almost done with it, but I can't recommend it enough. Plus, he's introduced me to people that just like you were talking about, that's how I heard about Howard Thurman is from this book, and some poets that I didn't know. So I've learned a lot just from the people he quotes in here that I didn't know. And the other book that is an older book, but I found it at a used bookstore, and it's a Eugene Peterson book, and it's Every Step in Arrival. And it's a very short devotion every day. It's like 40 days with the Bible, and he starts in Genesis. But the thing that hit me that I keep going back to is, he says, rather than keeping a ledger of defeated enemies, God's ancient people voiced their resurrection faith in song to him. Name one way God has made a difference in your life. Now tell the story back to him in the spirit of song. And what the Holy Spirit hit me with is, am I living a song or am I living an enemies list? And, that is, am I living a victory song with all the great things God has done, or am I just keeping a list? And in my family of origin, lists were never ending. And you got a list, here's all the things you need to do today, but you could never do it. It was like a list for the whole summer that my dad wanted you to have at the beginning of, a week. And so lists are really negative to me. So like, okay, am I keeping a negative list about life versus, living in gratitude and victory and love and seeing all the beautiful things that God is doing amongst us, and even in the crazy land that we live in, finding the blessings and the gifts and the beauty along the way.
I desperately need to start reading that book. I am feeling very embarrassed because I have had it on my stack and haven't looked at it yet. So, but then
Well,
again,
there's
you
just
should see my stack. It's only this high.
well, so yesterday, you'll appreciate this, Christine. Yesterday there was a meme on Instagram that said, "This is, how we have emotional support dogs and emotional support animals." It says, "This is my emotional support book list." Book stack. So these are my unread emotional support books. So we don't have to read; they're kind of just there for emotional support. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was, yes, we all have emotional support stacks of books that we need to read, or that we keep so they keep us comforted.
Well, and what I'm finding is, and I do usually have 3 or 4 that I'm actively reading. And what I found really helps for me is if I have something substantial like this, and then I have something like a children's book or something, or something like a children's book that I can look at and, kind of really be relaxed into
And
that.
playful. That's the play part.
Something playful like that. And it really does. And the awe and wonder as well. The illustrations in this book are so awe-inspiring to me, and well, of course, it does make me want to go out and look at the dandelions when I read about them in a book like that. Not that I'm ever likely to lose the word dandelion from my list, because we have, it's only the dandelions that hold up the lawn in our place. So, and they'll be the first ones to revive. They'll be the first ones to revive after this extremely dry summer that we've had too. So, but yeah, having a variety of books. And the next one I think that's on my list that I will get into is Mark Scandrett's latest book.
It's a great, it's so good.
I've looked through it. I just haven't had time to get into it in the way that I want to. And it's even though it's got some deep theological truths in it, it's kind of done with a very playful kind of way of looking at it as well, which I think is great.
And I love that he uses body prayer, and to help you engage, because I'm because the 7s are always in our brain. We're not always connected to our bodies, and so it helps me connect, the prayer to and the action, to living it out. How do we live out? I love it because it's about living out the Beatitudes, and how do we helping us live out as followers of Jesus and followers of God. I think that's what we need more than ever, is especially with all the traumatic things that have happened this year. How are we going to live out that love and those practices so that we, or feel whole ourselves, and we can help other people see the light and love of God versus all the dark things.
Well, and the horrible thing is that we need these constant reminders of that, you'd think that it kind of should come second nature to us, but of course it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
Well, I used to get mad at, I used to read the Old Testament and get mad at the children of Israel. It's like, what is wrong with you people? Why can't you get it? And it's like, no, because we forget. We need that. That's just part of humanness, is we forget. We totally forget. So we need to remember. Keep reminding us.
We love to complain too,
Oh yeah.
A few weeks ago, I read an interesting article that, again, I used in my meditation Monday about how, what something like 80% of the thoughts that go through our minds are negative thoughts. But it talked about how we can actually train our brains to focus on the positive ones, and to make ourselves happy by that, rather than being depressed and negative and all of this stuff. And I think it's true. We need practices that help us not the goal is to be happy, but practices that help us to look at things from a positive perspective, and often so that we can respond, we can react. I think that's
Well,
really
and
important too.
I was at the Refuge, which is Kathy Escobar's community,
Oh, wonderful community in
and
Denver. Yeah.
so Sunday night, and Pam Wilhelms, who's a consultant, creative person I've known for a long
Oh
time,
yeah. Uh-huh.
she was the speaker, and she did a practice where she said one way to interrupt anxiety and fear and those kind of a thing when you find yourself in that place is to start listing in your head or in and physically. You can write it down too, but she just had us list, sit there quietly and go through our head things that we were grateful for. And she said a practice of listing the things in your head and going through all the things you're thankful for will totally unwire the anxiety and unwire the
Yes.
fear. And I've been using that, and it's amazing. It's true. I didn't, it's like, yeah, sure, right, but it's really true. It rewires your
Oh
subconscious.
yeah. It does. It does. Which is why, of course, you and I are starting to get ready for our next webinar, which will be gearing up for a season of gratitude. Because again, we do need help. We need help in thinking about these things. But I found the same thing, and I know, and it's been suggested to me several times, but I haven't been good at following through on it, that evening practice for me should be, what are you grateful for today?
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful way to prepare yourself to go to bed, I think. I just wish I was better at doing it.
Well, that's what we can practice together. We can practice. There's I do have an app that I like on my phone that I use in the mornings. That is the Pray As You Go app.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I've used that for a long time. But then when you go deeper in the app, they have the prayer of examine. And so I believe the prayer of examine is a really great thing to do at night, before you go, kind of, where have you seen Jesus today or God today? Where have what are the things that you did, things you know God wasn't, well, God was always there, but you weren't necessarily there. But looking back at your day that way. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
you
that's
haven't,
another nice one. Yep.
it's a great app for prayer, for practicing, and they have so many good narrated, like even
Oh,
prayer
they're
walks.
beautiful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I have used that, but more when I've traveled. I found that it's a good way for when I'm away, because I find that I need different practices when I am on the road. Not that I've been on the road so much this last year or so. Um, so I've kind of tended to forget about that a little bit. But I found, on this trip to Texas, I was reminding myself of the practices I needed for when I'm going away, that help keep me grounded at the same time. Um, and it's very good to think of. And Prayer As You Go, yeah, it's a great one. That's the one I've used most consistently. I mean, people have suggested a lot of other ones to me, but I haven't found them as helpful as that. So
Yeah, I'm with you. That's the one that I go to the most. There's some newer ones, and I'll seasonally try different things, but that's the one that tends to be the one that I go to the most. I'm sometimes not a fan of the music always, but you can learn new things too that way through your choices of music.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Um, and it's true. It's not always exactly what I'd identify with, but that's good because it stretches us
Yep.
beyond, what we're perfectly comfortable with too, which I think we all need in the practices that we do at times. Not all the time. Went to an experimental church for a while where every week it seemed that they were doing something totally different. And I don't think any of us can cope with that.
Well, especially
Um,
not right now. I don't think. Yeah, I think right now we need the more grounded things that are rhythms, and that's what Rob and I talked a lot about in the last week. Is how are we going to put rhythms, because we got lost. The rhythms, at least for us, because I wasn't traveling and working outside. Our rhythms that we had, and the kids weren't home. There was the rhythms we normally had have gone away. So it's
yeah,
kind of like, what are the
what are the
rhythms
new ones? Yeah.
that we want to
Well,
do?
and Tom and I, in a couple of weeks, we're going on one of our prayer retreats, which we haven't done, of course, for ages. And part of what we do then is reflect back over the time that's been, and then look forward. And part of it is, well, what are the rhythms that we need for the upcoming season? What's going to help ground us?
Yeah.
What I call stability points. We need these stability points in our lives that really help us, to be stable.
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, especially when everything is shaky around us.
Oh,
That's
in so many ways, and as you say, one of the things that I've asked, and Tom watches the news a lot more than I do, and I've asked him not to look at it, for half an hour before we go to bed, because if I can hear that news in the background, I start to get anxious too, and
yeah.
I just don't need that. I've got to have something that helps me focus in another way. And so I will, maybe before we do the next one, part of what we need to ask each other is, okay, what did you get out of the last session? And what have you done about it?
Right. Well, I think the gratitude practice is the way, as we're preparing for our workshop on gratitude in September, that's what I've been thinking a lot about. How do I practice gratitude, and what helps me think about that, and what are my gratitude practices? Because it is a practice, and especially because we are inundated with social media and a lot of negativity, that it is a practice that we need to practice. So writing down, making a list of the things that I'm grateful for. And then I was looking back, I looked through my phone a lot, my picture, because I take a lot of pictures. But one year I started in Michigan when we were up on our holiday with drawing out every day, like three things I was grateful for.
Oh, lovely.
In kind of a picture. And I feel like that might be a good practice again. To try, and even if it's not every day, but every other day, and the practice of creating for me is where God meets me, and sometimes it's just starting to draw and then seeing where the Holy Spirit leads. So that's a thing I've been thinking a lot about, that art is a practice that I need to put back in for the fall. Yeah, I noticed our time. We're kind of at our time.
Yeah, we're at our time. Well, I just wanted to say what I've been focusing on as I start to think about this is, making a new garden, which of course is often the start, and a gratitude garden. And I had thought, I've had one that I've kind of brought back every time for the last 5 years because I've loved it so much. But I felt, I really did feel the other day, God said to me, no, you need something new. So that's as far as I've gone. But, thinking about the fact, and in some ways, I think because this is a new season, and because there's been so many changes in the world since I made that garden, I need something new to focus on, because just as you need, you do your artwork, which is always so spectacular. That's not something I can do, but that
is your art. That's your art.
It's my art. It's art. My art. And I think that all of us need to think, hey, what is the medium through which we best are able to express our gratitude? So
yeah, that's good. That's good.
And talking about which, I just realized we forgot to record this, so I'm a little bit embarrassed. But anyway, that's going to be as it is. But we will,
we can do it again. Well, we can do it again, and we can list in the comments too the books that we talked about, and where to get those, and then some of the other things that we shared. We can write up something about that so people know what happened if they didn't see it live.
Yeah. Well, and those of you that have followed us, we'd really appreciate some feedback, in the God Space Light group. If you can give some feedback so that we know, firstly, whether you think this is worthwhile. And secondly, do we need to have more structure to it? And probably thirdly, is there something? I mean, obviously, since Lilly and I, in our times together, are starting to focus on looking at the upcoming workshop, that's where we're likely to focus. But, we need to know from you as well, is this worthwhile, and what would you like us to be talking about? So anyway, we've had fun, I think.
Yeah, can I read a quote for our close? Can we close with a quote?
Yes, love
it. All right, this was a random find this morning from Henry Nouwen. People who have come to know the joy of God do not deny the darkness, but they choose not to live in it. They claim that the light that shines in the darkness can be trusted more than the darkness itself. and that a little bit of light can dispel a lot of darkness. They point each other to flashes of light here and there and remind each other that they reveal the hidden but real presence of God. They discover that there are people who heal each other's wounds, forgive each other's offenses, share their possessions, foster the spirit of community, celebrate the gifts that they have received, and live in constant anticipation of the full manifestation of the God's glory. And that's him. I love that people who come to know the joy of God do not deny the darkness, but they choose not to live in it. And
Lovely. Yeah. Yep. That's right.
That helps me today.
That is so profoundly important. So thank you. And blessings to everybody. We do hope to see you again then. Thank you.
Yep. Sounds good. Love ya.